63% of workers say they wouldn't be able to cover a $500 emergency expense.
Most people don't have $1,000 in the bank. Most people cannot handle a tire blowout, or they're going to put it on credit.
Americans now carry more.
Also, chat, let me know about the audio. Is the audio too loud or is my mic too low? Just let me know down in the comments, and I'm going to see it, and I'm going to fix it. We building the ship as we float, baby.
More than $1 trillion in credit card debt.
The official poverty measure in the U.S. today is based on calculations from the mid-1960s.
It's also a system that is pervasive in actually creating poverty situations.
Poverty leads to more anxiety, it leads to more stress, it leads to more health problems.
$37.9 million. That's the number of Americans currently living in poverty, accounting for 11.6% of the total population. That's despite the fact that America ranks first as the richest nation in the world in terms of GDP.
The United States is known for having this great abundance, and at the same time, alongside that abundance, there is widespread poverty and economic insecurity.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Well, the economic insecurity comes from the fact that we are in a very unique situation where we can buy things that we can't really afford and put it on credit. And the credit got an 18% interest rate, chat. If you doing that, you're crazy. You done lost your mind. The credit that we on got an 18% interest rate. That money going to somebody else. That's just going to outer space. That's going to a void. So you can forget about it. So, yeah, there's a financial insecurity because there's a lot of people buying things that they can't afford and putting it on credit so they can look like they got it. That's a big deal. That's a big issue.
You question, we're in the United States of America. How can the citizens be going through such a issue? We always boast that we're a superpower, that we are the richest in the world, and things just don't make sense.
Poverty in the U.S. had been steadily improving over the past decade, from a height of 48.8 million people living in poverty in 2013 to 34 million in 2019. That was until the pandemic changed its course.
COVID absolutely had a very deep impact on the access to employment and long-term employment for a number of families that were already vulnerable for various reasons.
Prior, it was myself and my two older brothers, along with my stepdad, that constantly worked to provide for everyone in the house. But after COVID-19 and the whole lockdown, we were laid off, and ever since then, we have had issues finding a job.
Poverty is expensive. About 11% of the federal budget, or $665 billion, goes to economic security programs. Wow. Child poverty alone is estimated to cost the U.S. over $1 trillion, based on the latest research from 2018.
There are also
and I wonder how much of that is them not changing what is considered poverty. Because if poverty is $26,000, like your household income is $26,000 or $30,000 or whatever it may be, if that hasn't increased with inflation, your buying power is way down in the dumps. I went to McDonald's. It used to be $1 for a McDouble. You could actually get a double cheeseburger at first for $1. Then they took off the extra piece of cheese and called it a McDouble and said you can get that for $1. And now it's to the point, chat, where a McDouble, what does it cost, like $2 now? It costs like $2? It's insane. So, yeah, and I think I seen a statistic that said that houses 2 years ago, the average price for a house was about $250,000. Now it's like $400,000. Now, I think it's skewed because there are a lot of properties, like when you look at the California area and the New York area, Austin, Texas, that appreciated like crazy, probably unrealistically, probably just a big bubble. But at the end of the day, they appreciate it like crazy, and so the houses are more expensive on that end. You could get cheaper properties somewhere in like a Tennessee or Mississippi. But at the end of the day, your dollar doesn't go as far. So if they're still running the poverty statistics off of $30,000, there are far more people in poverty than what they're showing.
High costs on an individual level. Poverty leads to more anxiety, it leads to more stress, it leads to more health problems, all kinds of things that amplify the effect of poverty.
Yeah, we got to send more money to the Ukraine.
Encounter when you're in this position is mostly depression. Why can't I find a job? Why are we in this situation? We're trying our best, and sometimes it's just falling back down on our face.
So how did poverty become such a big issue in the United States? And why is it so difficult to end it? Income inequality is one of the big reasons why the US suffers from such high rates of poverty. The income for the top 10% was more than 13 times higher than income at the bottom 10%, according to the US Census.
Yeah.
We, unfortunately, in the United States are at the very high end in terms of income inequality. And so what happens is when the distance gets further and further away, the rungs on the ladder get further away, and it's harder for people to climb those rungs out of poverty into the middle and to the upper class.
The pandemic
well, a big issue with the pandemic, though, and they keep highlighting the pandemic, but what happened is people got stimulus checks, chat. And you can fact check this. 40%. All right, now I'm talking about America's 400-year history. 40% of the U.S. dollars ever printed was printed in 2020, chat, for stimulus checks. And guess where all that money went? Straight to your boy Jeff Bezos. Big money Jeff Bezos, because the issue is when you give people money and they don't understand money, they still spend it. So people were just buying Batman toothbrushes on Amazon. Yeah, and so all that money went straight up to Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and that's why they got significantly richer over the pandemic, and people just stayed in their houses and bought flat screen TVs and drank alcohol till they almost passed out. That's what people did. You know, there's a lot of people that say if people have these lives where they're stimulated and they don't have to work, they're going to go and create art and start making gardens. I ain't seen none of that during the pandemic, chat. I ain't seen no art. I ain't seen no art renaissance during the pandemic, chat. Wasn't nobody selling art. that wasn't selling. I seen a lot of people drinking a lot, trying to bum off the system a little bit more. And that's what you got. So, yeah, and so what happened during COVID, and they keep highlighting it, was all the money went to the top, the richest people, because people went out and bought stuff. And that's what happens when you give people money. They just go and spend it.
Inequality worse. The Gini Index, which measures the nation's income inequality, rose for the first time in a decade by 1.2% in 2021.
The reason the pandemic has made that worse is because when you talk to large organizations, corporations, what they saw was that staff was leaving, but they had to respond, have that luxury. So inflation has kept up with the money that most people in the 1% have made, but it has deepened and widened the gap between those that have money and those that do not.
Yeah.
Research by MIT estimates that the living wage in the United States is $24.16 per hour for a family of 4. But the federal minimum wage is set at $7.25 per hour.
Yeah, but
this means that
who's like, people say that, but who's making $7.25? Who's making $7.25? Let's keep it a buck. And if you're making $7.25, you're like, come on now, you an illegal immigrant, brother. Do I gotta call ICE on you? Do I gotta go ahead and get you up out of here? Because why are you working for $7.25? The barista with blue hair at Starbucks, I just went to Starbucks. The lady with blue hair that gave me my coffee can make a mean coffee, but she's getting paid $15 to do that. And every time they give me that little iPad, they try to look away, but they asking for a tip, chat. I'm paying $5 for the coffee off the back, and then they want an extra tip on top of that. Where does it end? Are they going to start? They want me to tip them at McDonald's too? They want me to start doing that too? They want me to start tipping them at McDonald's? So it's a lot of issues going on, and people
A family of 4 needs to work more than 2 full-time minimum wage jobs to earn a living wage. And single-parent families need to work
The point that I was trying to make, Chad, is nobody's making $7.25, and if you are, you need to reassess what you're doing as far as making money, because you shouldn't be working for $7.25. Almost every American is capable of making more than $7.25 or $7.50 for their hour of labor. So if you're working for that, they like to throw that out there as like some show for how bad it is for everybody. But let's just be honest. If you're making that amount of money, you have to be, I think illiterate people make more money than that, to be honest.
Significantly harder.
We worked at a banquet hall. Any sort of party, we would set it up, come early, set the tables, dishes, plates, silverware, everything.
Absolutely right.
We worked
the Midwest,
for $15
Pennsylvania, southern states.
It was really bad. I would say we were really overworked. 13-hour shifts sometimes. We were really frustrated.
Y'all say the audio going in and out. Is the audio from my mic going in and out, or the audio from the video going in and out. Is it audio from the mic or audio from the video? Oh, it's hard to hear me in the videos. Okay, I'll turn my audio up then on my end. It'll be fine. I got y'all.
Frustrated with where we were, but at the same time, it was like, what do we do if we leave? You know, we were at that stage of like, yeah, we hate this job, but we have to keep it to continue going.
Problems with wages are especially worse for workers of certain races.
If we're looking
Oh,
at
here
the
they go.
broader
Here they go,
population
chat.
of people who are poor or low income, meaning one emergency away from being poor, we're talking about approximately 140 million people. Out of the 140 million, well over 70 million people, well over half of that population are people of color.
The U.S. also suffers from a lack of social safety nets that protect Americans from poverty.
If you look at, for example, the amount of cash that people might get if they're low income, it's very, very minimal.
Right now, we receive welfare, and it's roughly around $250 for my household is 7. And it actually has helped us a lot. Sometimes the numbers really don't make sense because how can a large family just live off a couple $100s, especially now?
You're not supposed to be living off that money, chat. You're not supposed to be living off welfare money, chat. Now I'll give you some leeway if you're an American citizen. You got ancestors that's paid into the tax system on your behalf. I get it. Everybody go through hard times. I get it. But you're not supposed to, your goal should not be to live off, off a welfare check, chat. That's not what it's meant for. It's to help you get back on your feet. This brother is a very well capable young man. Start swinging an axe. Make big rocks into little rocks if that's what you got to do. Do manual labor. All right? Go help your grandma. Go help somebody move their house. Go do something. You can make more than $250 a month if you apply yourself as a grown-ass man. Man don't work, don't eat. That's just that's the rule that I applied to my life, and I think it's worked for me. What y'all think, chat? Somebody saying the audio going in and out? Okay, we good? We good? All right, let's keep going. But yeah, if you're trying to live off a $250 a month check, you got an issue. That's not a government issue. That's not a me thing. I pay taxes, harder like taxes, like everybody else in the chat that's working hard for their money. Yeah, that's not an our issue. That's a
In
you
this
thing.
day and age where you go to the grocery store, you spend in a few items $100.
Most countries, for example, European countries, have what's known as a child allowance, where if you have a child, you get a certain amount of monthly income to help raise that child. That's pretty common, but in the United States, we don't have anything like that. And in the United States, we don't have universal benefits, for example, health care or child care.
It's also a system.
No, but we got the #1 military in the world. Yeah, we have fat homeless people here in America. We have drinkable bath water. Now you gonna get a little fluoride poison if you drinking the bath water. It's not good for you, but it's drinkable. So yeah, that's how it goes. We have a country of 300 million people. We can't have a welfare state here. That's not how it works. The country's too big.
That
We're not Europe.
many times is pervasive in actually creating poverty situations. So I'll give you an example. If I'm eligible for Medicaid today, and I'm also eligible for cash assistance, and I'm also eligible for SNAP, if I get a job that provides me even a little bit closer out of poverty, I lose all those benefits immediately, which means that I'm incentivized, if I need health care for my children, and I have a job that's not going to provide it right away, to not look for employment that is going to pay me an amount that's going to make me ineligible for certain benefits, right? So while people are working really hard for upward mobility, the systems that we have in place don't give them the grace to be able to come out of poverty and provide their own agency to actually create the opportunity for upward mobility.
Oh my goodness.
The official poverty measure in the
Bunch
US
of
today
whiners.
is based
Oh.
on calculations from the mid-1960s. It's calculated by comparing pre-tax income against a threshold set at 3 times the cost of minimum diet in 1963. A large number of federal programs still rely on this measure to figure out who is eligible for assistance and welfare.
The researcher
See, now I will say this: we do seem to be in a system that benefits people who want to bum off the government more than it benefits the middle class, chat. I personally, now most of the people I know, especially the black folks I know, are hardworking people. My dad woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning. He walked to work 2 miles. I'll never forget it. He gave me my work ethic. I seen him do it every day, and I think that was valuable. So a lot of the people I know are hardworking people, hardworking individuals. They do what they got to do to feed their family. But I do know some niggas that don't like to work, chat. Hey, guilty as people. Hey, I know some people that just don't want to get a job because there's a lot of benefits that you could get if you don't get a job. I'm going to be honest. And that's my number one issue with what's going on in America currently, because the rich kind of talk about tax cuts for the people who already got money. And the Republicans talk about tax cuts for people who already got money, and the Democrats tend to talk about welfare programs for people who ain't doing nothing. But who talking about the middle class? It's getting harder and harder for people to pay their bills in the middle class, people who are actually going to work and being productive in society. And we out here sending tax dollars to the Ukraine, chat. We sending millions of your hard-earned money to the Ukraine. So they can ball out. They can ball till they fall. And a lot of that money's getting laundered, all right? Now, I'm not going to go too deep into that because that's not what this is about. But from what I see, a lot of that money seems to be getting laundered. So the middle class is getting taxed like crazy, and they have to bear the brunt of all of the force of society, and nobody ever seems to prioritize them. And that is an issue. I know people that are not working because they get more benefits than if they were to start working for a job that might not pay them enough. There's like a level where you can live a better life if you're not working. And I think that that's not a good incentive for people if you want them to actually be productive. I understand in society you need safeguards for people who are a little less capable. I get it. I do understand that. But there's a lot of niggas just taking advantage of the system. I'm sorry to keep saying the N-word, but that's what they is. They not hard black Americans. Those two different types of people. All right, it's got to be very distinct here. Here's some cash for your egg shortage. I appreciate you, dog. Black TV, man. I appreciate you. $2 super chat. Appreciate you, man. But yeah. Yeah, I do know a lot of people that don't want to work because you get benefits for not working. A lot of benefits. More than sometimes people in the middle class that are working hard for their money, and I think that's an issue. We're funding stuff that we shouldn't be funding. We spending $40 on trans. I don't know if y'all seen this in the last video I made, but they spent $40 million. $241 million. I'm sorry. And the guy said that was the floor, not even the ceiling. If you go watch the last video I posted, it's the last clip on that video. He said that's the floor, not even the ceiling. And guess what they were spending the money on? Transgender research for pets. $241 million. That's the floor, not the ceiling, of your hard-earned money was going to transgender pets, chat. Where's Peter when you need him? Because they always seem to show up when we trying to get some energy, some oil. But when the freak show going on, when the freak man over there with the cats and the dogs trying to get them to sleep with each other, that's the same. Peter ain't nowhere to be found no more. So yeah, it's weird out here. There's a lot of people in the middle class that's bearing the brunt of society, and they don't get any breaks. They get no breaks. Nobody ever talks about them. Nobody ever gives them a bone. The IRS is hounding them for taxes, even though the IRS is failing all of the audits. They want to audit small business owners, but when they get audited, they can't even pass the audits. And that's an issue because they're taking our money and spending it. They hound us for our money so that they can spend it. And that's what they're spending it on, and they can't even tell us where it's all going. That's an issue, in my opinion.
Work became the basis of that measure, never intended it to be used in the way that it currently is, both as a widespread measure of poverty, but then as the basis of all of these different social welfare programs and allocations of resources towards those programs.
It doesn't take certain very obvious indicators into consideration. To start, it looks at pre-tax income, which is not what I'm taking home every day, so that doesn't make sense. It also doesn't look at different family compositions, which absolutely impacts how a family may spend money. If I am the type of family that has both of my parents living with me, I'm going to spend more. It doesn't look at expenses around food or childcare. So in many ways, it's incredibly out of date because it has not kept up with the way life has changed for most Americans.
Yeah, most Americans are not having both of their parents live with them. Cap. They're trying to turn this into a DEI type of situation, I'm assuming, because they must be talking about immigrants, because chat, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think most Americans are living with their parents, chat. I don't think that's a real thing. Not here. I'm not saying that may be how it shouldn't be. I'm not saying cross-generational households are a problem, but I'm saying this seems to be geared towards maybe immigrant families, because I don't know very many American families that are living with both parents in their house. I don't, me personally.
As a response to these criticisms, the supplemental poverty measure was developed in 2011 as an
Salt Storm in the
over
chat, man. I see you.
It incorporates into the measurement both the cost of basic needs like food, clothing, utilities, but also government transfers and programs. So you could see the effect of government programs in addressing poverty and economic insecurity. It also takes into account geographical differences. So the supplemental poverty threshold is more of a range depending on where you live, your household size, and what your housing status is. So it is more comprehensive. And in that way, it's an improvement on the official poverty measure.
But some experts argue that even the supplemental poverty measure isn't a perfect method.
While it looked to close the gap on certain indicators that the original poverty measure was not taking into consideration, it did not go far enough. Food is one of those places where we are still not taking into account what food may cost in a state like New York versus a state like Mississippi. So if you have a universal brush for the whole country, you're going to miss a number of people that are either at risk of falling into poverty or are already technically living in poverty but are not counted by them.
Yeah, then you get out of New York. Chat, am I tripping? Let me know if I'm tripping in the chat. You get out of New York. And that's what I was talking about beachfront property. You don't get to live in the places where everybody want to live if you can't afford groceries. Leave it. You don't get to be there. You don't get to be with the shining lights and all the parties and to be where all the degeneracy is and all the fun, and you can't afford it. Go live in Mississippi if you can't afford it. Because to me, all this sound like is more begging from the middle class. This is more begging to put more burden on the middle class. Because if you asking for money from the government don't make money. They only take money. And who are they taking the money from? The middle class. So yeah, get out of New York. If you can't afford to live in New York, you can't afford to live in New York. That's how it works. Everybody wants to live in New York. You can't afford it, then you can't afford it. Leave. But everybody want to try to stay and try to get more welfare and protest for welfare benefits and instead of trying to do what's best for their family. You got to make comprehensive decisions. And if that means you have to leave a place, then you have to. Yeah, to be honest, rich people are the most miserable people I know. Salt Storm, I'm not going to lie to you, brother. I've been broke, and I've had a little bit more money. And having a little bit more money is definitely better. Chat, having a little bit more money is definitely better. I think once you get to the point where you don't have to worry about when your bills are going to, or how you're going to pay your next bill, and you get that peace of mind, that's great. But then when you get a little bit more wiggle room because you saved enough money and you set some money aside, or maybe appreciating somewhere because you've actually saved your money, and that's when life starts to get a little bit better. I'm not going to lie to y'all. People like to say that. I think that's just like one of those copes that people who don't make a lot of money like to say. But yeah, it is also still relative. I think if you're unhappy, you will have money and also be unhappy. I think for me personally, all of my friends are people that I've known since I was 15, 14. I got like 4 or 5 people that I really keep tight. I got a great wife, great family, great support system. So that's where I get a lot of my value from, and I get to share some of what I'm doing with those people. And that's what gives me the benefit. That's what gives me the happiness and the sense of pride. And what makes me a little bit more happy with the money. So I guess, yeah, if you live a modest life, you can also be happy. But that whole cope where, like, people say, like, rich people are, like, depressed. If they want to be depressed and they start doing drugs, then maybe, yeah. But, I mean, it definitely helps when you can afford to pay your bills. It definitely gives you a peace of mind.
The Census Bureau told CNBC that both the official poverty measure and the supplemental poverty measure provide a consistent data of poverty measurement, and that the Bureau continually strives to innovate and improve the design and measurement of their well-being statistics. This difficulty in measuring poverty has also led some experts to argue that poverty isn't as serious of an issue as it's made to believe.
Poverty in the United States, in the way it's normally understood, is not a big issue at all. It's deliberately miscounted, okay? So the reality is that we have poverty in the United States because the Census Bureau ignores the entire welfare state when it goes to count poverty. You count poverty by saying, well, a household has an income, say, less than $26,000 a year.
Yeah,
but
$26K. That's the number.
95% of the welfare benefits are not counted. They also undercount earnings by about 50%. Therefore, you have a lot of poverty, basically because most of the resources that these folks have are not counted.
Unless we can get an accurate number of just how prevalent poverty is in the United States, attempting to eradicate it is close to impossible.
When we don't have those numbers, a lot of folks who are making policy decisions are flying blind. Whether I'm a large corporation that is looking to invest in an organization or in a city, or whether I am a public official that is trying to figure out how much SNAP is enough SNAP. If I don't have a baseline, there's no way I'm ever going to be solving the problem.
Yeah.
If COVID has proven anything, poverty is an issue that can be resolved with the right policy. Government assistance led to a significant decline in the supplemental poverty measure, lifting 45.4 million Americans out of poverty during the height of the pandemic.
Policy, I would say, is one of our strongest tools in
Did I just click on welfare propaganda? What is going on? Are they really trying to say that because we gave people stimulus checks that there was less poverty in 2021? This is a clown show. What are we talking about here? Because we printed out 40% of the money that we've ever had as a country in 2020 and gave it out to people, that solved poverty. That didn't just inflate everything to the point where now people can't afford a home. I don't understand what kind of logic they're using here. And this makes sense. For religion rights and social justice. Yeah, come on now. So as soon as you put that social justice in there, you already know what time it is. Who are we kidding?
fully addressing and eradicating poverty. It is where we can define what the problems are, accurately measure what the problems are, and then design and implement the programs we need to address the true extent of poverty.
Really good example that I'll use is that of the elderly. This is the one real success story in the United States, is we've really been able to reduce the poverty rates amongst the elderly as a result of primarily Social Security and Medicare. So if we didn't have those programs today, poverty rates for the elderly would go from about 10% to 40%.
Wow.
And that shows you the dramatic impact that government programs and policies can have on reducing poverty.
Figuring out a more accurate method of measuring poverty is a vital step in eradicating the issue.
I would begin with changing how we define and measure poverty to include the full extent of economic insecurity.
Another way of measuring poverty, and this is a way that European countries and other countries use, is what's known as a relative measure. And so they say, if you fall below 50% of median income, then we're going to count you in poverty. So if the median income was $70,000 and you fell below $35,000, you'd be counted as being in poverty.
More targeted social programs could also have a significant impact on the impoverished community.
Some of those programs may include an expanded child tax credit, the kind of which we saw in 2021 when it was expanded during the pandemic. raising the minimum wage immediately to at least $15 an hour.
I will say I am for child credits. Having children is very important for the future of the future of the country, and it is a noble process that people take on. I think it's a beautiful thing, and it is very, very, very expensive. So I am for some sort of cuts if you are trying to have children. I do agree with that, chat. You might as well go ahead and call me Bernie. Am I Bernie Sanders now, chat? Am I cooked? Am I Bernie Sanders now for believing that? I do believe that for children you should get tax cuts. Yeah, it's an expensive process, and you want to incentivize people to still do it because it is an expensive process, especially if you want to provide them some sort of life. Now, money isn't fully important for a kid. The love of you and the woman that you're with is going to be far more important than the money that you have. Almost every statistic shows that. A balanced two-parent household with both the mom and the father are better than a single mother that is rich. The results are better for the children, generally speaking. So, yeah, so you don't necessarily have to have a bunch of money, but I do think we should incentivize people to have more kids, for sure.
Towards a living wage and guaranteeing that everybody who wants to work can work as a guaranteed ability and access to a good paying job.
I think a really straightforward solution that people have been talking about more recently is the
Dark
idea
Wolf,
of a
we definitely
universal
need tax
basic
cuts.
income.
It's crazy.
So here the idea is that if poverty is a lack of income, then a very straightforward way is to transfer some income.
Oh, transfer some income, chat. Hey, chat. Transfer y'all income to me. Let's go ahead. I'm in poverty, chat. This is the poor man's transfer y'all income to me. Where does the transfer come from? Do we print the money? Do we raise the taxes for the middle class who are already struggling and then just put them into poverty too? To the point where they just give up? Is that what we do? Silly solutions. That's a silly solution. UBI, in my personal opinion, it seems like a great idea in a utopia world. It does seem like a great idea, but the money has to come from somewhere. Either you print it, you make inflation worse, you put us more into debt as a country, you devalue everybody's labor, because that's what inflation is. It's the devaluation of your labor. When you go to work, your work hours are worth less when you get your money and you can't buy as many things. It's devaluing your labor. So is that what we do? Is that gonna solve the poverty issue? Now, I'm not an economist, but I don't think that's the solution to the problem. I don't think UBI. I think there's this fantasy idea in this utopia world, chat, where people are going to start building gardens and showing their art and doing prayer circles. And that ain't what happened over COVID, chat. I know people started wanting to end it all. People started drinking a lot of alcohol, started hitting their wives, a lot of domestic violence situations. But yeah, there weren't these communal gardens and people doing hugging trees in the forest. That's not what it was. People were literally just becoming. I think that this is underrated. I think that a lot of people, idle minds can be easily manipulated. I think they easily fall into, number one, more depression. I think idle minds also tend to be more seduced by their vices. And I think that's what we've seen over COVID. I've seen a lot of people getting high. I've seen a lot of people drinking, but not being very productive, in my personal opinion. Now, me, I started the Poor Man's Podcast, so I was trying to be productive, right? But I don't think that was most people, to be quite honest. And I think that's a fair assessment. And I think it's, something that people have realized is you got to keep people busy, chatter. People start diving out of windows and jumping in front of buses and getting divorces. I know that's an unfortunate thing, or that's not something we want to admit because everybody hates work, of course. I get it. But yeah, I think that's a truth, and I think that people understand that, and this is why you got to keep people working, because you got to keep people occupied. You can't have people thinking too much. People started self-diagnosing with depression, getting on TikTok. It was a shit show in 2020 and 2021.
I would use to get people to shift their way of thinking. And it's the analogy of musical chairs. Let's say we have 10 people playing and 8 chairs available. Now, who's going to win and lose at that game? Well, if we focus on the individual level factors, people that were in a bad position when the music stopped and so on. But if we focus on the structure of the game, then 2 people are going to lose out regardless of the individual attributes. And that's what's going on here in the United States. We're focusing on people aren't working hard enough, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, when really the problem is that there aren't enough chairs in the game.
More than half of Americans with an income of $100,000 a year or higher say they're living paycheck to paycheck. This may be the result of a
Chat, I don't know how much I'll make it. I'm not trying to pocket watch, but who thinks they can make a $100,000 stretch? Put a 1 in the chat if you think that if you was making $100,000 a year, you could make that stretch, chat. And that's what I'm talking about. We have a consumerism issue. Adrian Peterson made $100 million in his career and he's broke. Because it don't matter how much money you give somebody, if they don't have financial literacy, they're just going to blow it. And so what people do is as they make more money, as they get a raise, they go and get a new car. Go get an old car. That Toyota going to get you where you got to go. It's going to get you there. And ride it till the wheels fall off. That's what you got to do. All right? Keep the insurance low when you get that cheap car. That's what you got to do. What people do is they get a little raise, and instead of saving the extra money that they get, putting it into the stock market, setting it aside, they go and get a new car loan, chat. They go and get a new car loan, and y'all been seeing these car loans, chat. The trucks cost $70,000. 5 years ago, you could have got a little 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house for 70, 80 grand, 100 grand. I know it's a little off for 100 grand. But after you pay all that interest on that 12% loan you done got for that car, you're going to pay that car off two times over by the time that 5 years is done. But people don't have the financial literacy. So they just go pay based off of how much they can afford a month instead of the final price. And that's what happens. These people are making this money, but that don't mean you financially literate. So you getting conned out of your money. As soon as you go to the car dealership, it's somebody in there dugging right now, waiting to give you a loan that you can't afford with a 15% interest rate, and then they going to come take your car when you can't afford it, chat. They can't wait for you to walk up out of there and drive out of there thinking you getting a deal. It's silly work. So, yeah, I can make a $100,000 stretch. I think most of the people in the chat can make a $100,000 stretch. But they're hyper materialistic. They want to live in the city. They want to be able to go out and get $16 drinks, get drunk at home. Go out stumbling already when you go out. $16 is egregious. You should not be paying that anywhere. You waiting in line to pay $16, $20 to get in, and then you paying an additional $16 for every shot you take. Get drunk at home. Get drunk in the car. No, never mind. Don't drive. I ain't going to say that. Uber. All right? Sneak something in. Do something. But these people want to live lavish lives, and then they want to complain and try to beg people for money. It's like, no, bro, you make $100,000 a year. I don't feel bad for you. I'm sorry. I don't feel bad for you. I seen my dad raise a whole family off about 50, 60K. Now, he didn't upgrade it since, but I seen him do it. I seen him buy a house. Now, my mom and dad, they didn't work together. They got a second house, and I seen them build on that. So I can't sympathize with somebody that's making $100,000 trying to beg people for money. I can't.
Sneaky behavioral phenomenon called lifestyle creep.
Lifestyle creep is the common pattern of making a little more money and starting to spend a little bit more money. Yeah. It happens almost automatically.
I think people hold these benchmarks in their mind. If I reach this position or I get this promotion or I make it to this age, then I can live this life, or then I deserve to have these things. And then they kind of go a little crazy or
consumer culture, absolutely.
And then it becomes like a trade-off. Like they only can
How tall am I?
enjoy their
I'm 5'8".
present happiness, and they're not able to save or plan for the future.
There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things. The mental, emotional reason why we want to acquire more is generally rooted in this need for like your perceived value. Like, we live in a world where, like, the nicer car you drive, the higher your perceived value is.
6 out of every 10 people surveyed said that paying for everyday expenses negatively impacted their mental health.
It does take a lot of joy from just life and always being in this scarcity mindset when there isn't necessarily scarcity to fear.
Here's why Americans feel like they're constantly struggling to keep their paycheck, even when they start making more money.
Say you get a new job and you have a little bit of a pay bump. Suddenly there's a little more room in your budget. Maybe you do some small upgrades, like you eat out rather than cook at home, or buy those Taylor Swift tickets.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah, that's what happens.
Upgrade your music subscriptions. Anything like that is an example of lifestyle creep. It's just these little upgrades that are very hard to undo financially or even psychologically once you've made them.
A lot of people have this scarcity mindset around money, and they spend so much of their lives saving. And so there can be this point where if you're constantly saving your whole life and then you finally reach this marker of financial success, or you finally reach this big paycheck number, you feel like you finally deserve to enjoy your life.
The idea that people save and they just hit a point where they feel like they deserve it, I fully disagree with that. Most people don't have $1,000 in the bank. Like, most people cannot handle a tire blowout, or they're gonna put it on credit. There's no financial literacy, no financial education that happens. The average person does not think about lifestyle inflation at all. I think it's something that's not even on the average person's
Yeah, it's not,
radar.
but it should
Coming
be.
in the pandemic, there was this strong desire to go out and splurge on experiences, maybe take a trip. This is often referred to as revenge spending or revenge travel.
Maybe take a trip. Who do these people think they are, chat? Maybe take a trip. My parents hardly ever left the state that they grew up in. These trips that these kids is doing now, that's a very new age luxury thing that you get to do when you have money. That's not a everyday, that's not a normal thing throughout history. Being able to get on a flight and just go to Jamaica, that's not a normal thing. And what, they want to implement UBI because there's a bunch of people in New York who make over, with green hair, who make over $100,000, who, number one, they vote for these policies that make it so that they get taxed more. They want to pay for illegal immigrants to live in their country. This is the stuff they vote for. They want to upgrade the subway system to put little spikes on there so people can't jump the little system and get on the train, and it just don't work, chat. They wasted that money. So they vote for these policies in these democratic states, and then when they can't afford nothing, they want to implement UBI. Egregious work. That'll be 50 lashes. That's 100 lashes. I'm sorry about that. That's 100 lashes. I can't even stand that idea. I hate that idea. I hate everything about that. I don't like that at all. I hate that. Oh, now we got to do UBI because your $100,000 check don't go far enough in New York City. So you want to take money from the family that makes $60K and they trying to live a humble life in Minnesota or in Wisconsin or in Mississippi or in Kentucky because you want to live in the city and put green dye in your hair and pay for illegal immigrants to come live in your city. That's 50 lashes. I hate that idea. I hate everything about that.
Research shows that young adults are particularly susceptible to this. They feel discouraged by higher prices and, making ends meet. So they might feel like they'll never have enough money to retire anyway. They might as well enjoy themselves now. Unlike perhaps their parents were, young adults need to be more responsible for their retirement because a lot of the safety nets that maybe their parents had, like a pension, no longer exist or are extremely rare. So they need to contribute to their own 401k if they want to shore up their financial security.
My bad, y'all. I got somebody in the chat that says you're doing Umar lashes. That'll be 50 lashes for you. Let's go ahead and get him up out of here. We're going to go ahead and go send him to the gulag. Where you at? Don't try to hide in the messages now. Where you at? Bro, do it. Oh, yeah, AP. Let everybody say goodbye to AP. We're going to go put him in the gulag for a minute. All right, AP. Everybody say goodbye to AP. That's 50 lashes for AP. Let's go and get him up out of here.
Thing about spending a little more than we should that can feel like rebellious or bad And it often can be a reaction to our family culture around money, or parentified or internalized rules around what we can give ourselves.
Everything is an internal role, and it's just I'm a victim of my family and my trauma and how I grew up. You're making bad decisions. Financial discipline is a discipline, like working out. I would love to go to the nicest restaurant every night, but I can't do it because I know that I have to provide a family for my future and a future for my family and a future for myself. It's not a product of anything that happened in the past. And even if it is so, nobody cares. Stop complaining. You have to grow up eventually. I'm sorry. I have empathy for people who are in the struggle. And I understand a lot of people don't understand financial literacy. I do think it should be taught more in school, especially when it comes to interest rates. I think some of the interest that are given to people is criminal. You're making money without adding anything of value to the marketplace. You're literally just charging people money for their to borrow them money. And you're kind of preying on their natural impulse to be impulsive, to just want things now. I get it. I think the interest rate should be a little bit lower, Chad. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think 15, 16, 18% is reasonable, in my personal opinion. But I don't get to make those rules. The credit card companies get the lobby to make those things happen, Chad. So, we got 18-year-olds that get shoved a plastic Capital One card and go tell them to go die. As soon as you turn 18, there's just a blizzard of Capital One and goddamn Discover cards coming at you. And the moment you activate one of them things, it's downhill from there, Chad. They want you in college debt and they want you in credit card debt ASAP to go ahead and get that started. But yeah, that's what's going on. These people are taking on debt and they want to complain and they want to act like it's trauma. But really, at the end of the day, it's a discipline. It's a personal decision. It's a personal decision. That's all it is. And you have to see it as that, or you're just going to continue to be a victim of it. And nobody's going to care. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not paying for no UBI, bro. I'm going off the grid, chat. I'm taking my super chat money, and I'm going off the grid. I can't do it. I'm not paying you to be making $100K in New York. There's no way.
And some people might overspend as like revenge against these rules, and some might look at someone who's overspending and think and kind of label them as all bad or all good. And there can be a lot of guilt and anxiety around the consequences. Spending is a way for us to meet one need when another isn't met.
I was 19 years old when I entered my first corporate job. I was still figuring out how to adult as well as how to be in this, corporate world, make an income, which for sure led to overspending. I was sad, so I would shop. I was getting serotonin through shopping. Then that led to me accumulating over $30,000 of credit card debt. And I had to figure out how the heck I was going to pay that off.
When your spending is dictated by emotions or depriving yourself or holding back your needs, that's when it becomes problematic.
I generally like to think of lifestyle inflation in sort of two buckets. You have like your general idea of what lifestyle inflation is, which is the buying fancy cars, the buying nice things along those lines. And then there is lifestyle creep that's more like regular everyday things that if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're going without, like going to the dentist, getting oil changes on your car.
30K is insane. That's what I'm talking about, though.
Oil change was just like not even a priority. Like I'm trying to keep tires on my car. I'm trying to keep it right.
30K, you might as well go ahead and find a hole. You might as well go ahead and find a hole and go ahead and live in that motherfucker. Oh, yeah, because 30K and all of that 30K is accruing more interest. And you knew you couldn't afford it before you bought it, but you kept buying it because you're a perpetual victim and you paint yourself to be that way and you act like you don't got power in your own life. And that's a big issue because nobody's going to care. And you want us to care because you're complaining on CNBC about how you can't afford things, but nobody cares.
I'm trying to keep the registration paid. I'm not concerned about an oil change, right?
More than 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck as of September 2023. That, along with inflation, can have serious financial consequences. Many Americans also don't have emergency savings to fall back on. 63% of workers say they wouldn't be able to cover a $500 emergency expense.
There's that saying, being poor is really expensive, because then when it is time to get basic maintenance on your car, it ends up being way more expensive than you were planning on it being because you haven't done basic maintenance.
Yeah,
and
that's true. That's true.
Beyond car
that's
trouble.
true.
46% of Americans said they have a balance on their credit card because of an emergency expense, according to a creditcards.com survey. 10% coming from car problems, 11% to cover unexpected medical bills, and 10% for home repairs.
Because of inflation and higher prices nearly
Yeah,
across
the
the
interest
board,
like $500
people have
a
been
month,
having a
you're
harder
cooked.
time making
You're
ends
done.
meet, and often that means
You ain't even
turning
making
to
a dent in
credit
the
cards
principal.
to fill
That's
in the gap
interest.
between what you need to buy and what you can actually afford.
Yeah, they pay
Credit
them with
card
minimal
rates are over
payments, and it never goes
20%.
anywhere.
That's the highest interest that you'll likely find anywhere unless you're getting a payday loan. Credit card debt can really spiral out of control, and pretty quickly.
The solution to get what you need when you're in a position when you don't have it, it really is to just make more money. It sounds like a simple solution, but it also sounds like a condescending one, right? You tell somebody who like is doing the best that they can that like they need to make more money. The solution to make more money isn't really realistic.
See, I've heard this thing being said. I can't remember where I heard it, but it was basically like poor people stay in poverty because they make decisions like payday loans, and they tend to be more likely to buy lottery tickets and stuff like that, which are basically just taxes on kind of stupid people. I understand you want a sense of hope that you're going to one day become a millionaire or a billionaire because of taxes or because of a lottery ticket, but obviously chances are slim that that's ever going to happen. Some people just like the sense of hope that comes with buying the ticket, though, and I get it. But I'm not a gambler myself. But they say that's how the poor people stay poor. The middle class stay in the middle class because they get lifestyle creep. They go out and buy cars that they can't afford. They go and buy a house that they can't afford. They get into credit card debt. That's a big issue in the middle class. And that's what they say holds you back in the middle class. And if you can avoid those financial pitfalls, it's literally just avoiding those things, just staying as frugal as possible. I know we live in a big-ass mall. That's what America is. They really paint America to not have any values anymore. W or L, take chat. They paint America to not have any values anymore, like we don't have an identity, and that's because we have a consumerism crisis. America has become a mall, and they think our only identity is consumerism. So people can come from any culture and assimilate into our culture as long as they're just consumers or business owners. And that's just not the case. We do have our own culture. But I do understand that America does look like a big-ass mall. Everywhere you go, somebody's trying to sell you something or take money from you. But it comes down, again, to the discipline. You have to not allow them to do that because they're cheating you out of your future when you give them the money that you work for. Those are your hours. You got to think of your money as like your time. It's your lifeblood. It's like you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into getting those dollars. Don't let people or companies separate you from those dollars just because they put a attractive woman on a Burger King ad. You know, just because they got a woman in a red bikini in front of a Chevy, you don't got to go buy one. You're not going to get the girl, chat. All right, we have an identity here in America, and it isn't consumerism. I know we've been co-opted into believing that. We have been co-opted into believing that by companies that shove ads into our face everywhere we go. You probably got 15 of them just being on YouTube. And you don't want to buy none of that shit. All it do is make you not want to buy more at this point if you got your head on tight. All you do is skip ad, skip ad, skip ad. I'm tired of non-skippable ads. It's crazy work. But they're everywhere, chat. We have an identity, and it's not just consumerism, and you got to find yours. For sure.
The experts that I talked to said it's okay to treat yourself as long as you've built in a buffer in case something comes up. You want to be able to find that balance between enjoying your life and your emotional well-being.
We kill God and
your
replace him with
financial
materialism. I 100%
Marbriza
agree.
Flores describes herself as a recovering super saver.
I would describe a super saver as someone who maybe is now in a position where they do have some sort of income, some sort of stability, but it's a certain mindset that keeps you in scarcity mode and afraid to spend on things that you may need or
Chat, I just pulled this up because somebody asked it down in the chat. Somebody said, how many ads do Americans see a day? Look at what it just look. Take a guess of how many ads. Don't Google it. Take a guess. I'm gonna pull it over into the screen so y'all can see it. Take a guess of how many ads the average American sees a day. By the way, the chat is jumping. Y'all 14 chat. Yeah, that's a great chat rate. But how many ads do y'all think the American people see a day? At least 15? At least 15? Take a look at this. Now, this is that AI stuff, you know, that they promise is going to be the future, but really it's just like a glorified search engine that just kind of berates you anytime you try to search something on Google now. But look at what it says, chat. 4 to 10,000 ads a day. It's disgusting. Ads people actually notice is closer to 100. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So the ads you actually see are closer to 100, but there's something called subliminal ads where you can see them out of your peripherals and you can still be enticed. All right, and this became illegalized back in I forget when, but this became illegalized because they knew if you flashed a commercial on a screen, you can entice people to still buy your product just off of the subliminal message. Our whole economy is an ad. Our whole economy is an ad. That's what it all is. Like the content that I'm making, it's an ad. It's just to push ads, essentially. I make money via ads unless y'all send in chats. If you think about how many ads, I mean, like Instagram used to be a beautiful website, but now they don't even show you people that you know. They just show you a bunch of people you don't care about, and they show you a bunch of ads in between. Scrolling on Instagram, you'll see, if you actually pay attention to it, I think a lot of people have become numb to it. Or at least we like to think so. But scrolling on Instagram, you'll see a whole bunch of ads. That's all it is at this point.
Want and kind of affect your lifestyle in that way. My way of saving it was to hoard it.
And the tough part is that saving for the sake of saving, it's not very reinforcing, but it can kind of be addictive, and there's momentum in that.
I wouldn't advise going to that extreme. It does take a lot of joy from just life and always being in this scarcity mindset when there isn't necessarily a scarcity to fear. After working with a wealth coach, I continued to save because I was still very kind of would put me at ease in that scarcity mindset. Like I felt at ease having kind of my savings. I continued to save money.
The peace of mind is more important than the consumerism.
Way,
yes, absolutely.
With the intention being of spending it.
When you're in scarcity, you're feeling this anxiety. My first thing that I like to tell individuals is forgive yourself for what you've done in survival mode. I think I like to divide it between, what's essential, what's, an actual bill type of expense versus a lifestyle. What's a choice that you take on to spend money. For example, a choice to go out drinking and having fun, and there's also not the choice. You have to make that car payment. You also have to put gas in that car for it to go, right?
Yep.
So there's things that you can't avoid, and there's things that you have a choice to do, and you can adjust.
Value-based spending is what I teach, and it's where you sit down and you really evaluate, one, where am I spending my money right now, and am I being reactive or am I being proactive in that?
Dark Wolf said he's seen
spending my money in places
more than
that
12
really
ads just watching this
value
video. I
for
appreciate
me,
you, Dark Wolf.
I
I feel bad for you.
Spending my money because of
but I appreciate you for watching them because I get a little money from them. You feeding my
money
daughter,
is
brother.
going
You
right
feeding
now,
my daughter.
and looking at, am I aligned with this? Is this something that I actually value?
The goal here is to find balance. It's about finding ways to spend in the moment and also how you want to spend your money in the future. So it's about enjoying your life, but not being so focused in a future that hasn't come yet or too much focus on the present. The idea is having your cake and eating it too. You can have bites of your cake right now and then save some cake for later.
How Americans racked up $1 trillion in credit card debt. Oh, my goodness. Let's look at the average interest rate for credit card debt. Actually, I'm going to let the video play and I'm going to pull it up.
The U.S. economy has been on recession watch for months now. And so far, the all-important American consumer has been holding strong, keeping those recession forecasts from becoming true.
Consumer is still spending.
Consumer is in better shape. If they have money, they're going to spend it.
Consumers continuing to be resilient.
The consumer health has been resilient so far this year.
Consumer resilience is about to be tested.
Oh, chat, I'm finna throw up, chat. The average interest rate on a credit card is 24%, chat. I'm finna throw up. I'm sick to my. That's disgusting work. That's just unnecessary. Literally, if that was being done in the 1930s by a dude in a pinstripe suit in an alley, it would be loan sharking, chat. But the credit card companies have went to lobby to our politicians in order to sell us credit cards that have a 24% interest rate. That's unnecessary. You're making money off of borrowing people money. You don't need to charge 24% for that, chat, in my personal opinion. But I guess you can name your price, and if people are so consumeristic or if people are so involved in consumerism that they can't see past it, they're just going to be victims of their own impulse. It's just punishing people from their impulses. That's what it is. Just like how a cigarette might punish you, just how alcohol might punish you. If you can't control your impulses with buying, you're going to be paying 24% interest rate, chat. Crazy.
Americans now carry more than $1 trillion in credit card debt going into the holiday shopping season. The Federal Reserve's rate hikes have caused average interest rates for credit cards to spike to more than 22%. Rates on retail credit cards are even higher, nearing 29% on average.
Wow.
Despite this, the holiday season shows no signs of a slowdown, as each shopper is prepared to spend almost $900 on average this year, according to an NRF survey.
US consumers walking towards a cliff, basically.
The state of the consumer will be in focus in the post-holiday season, as economists will want to know, can American consumers handle racking up a record amount of credit card debt, and if it will lead into more delinquencies. This is the first time credit card debt has topped $1 trillion in America. That amount includes both revolving balances and balances paid off at the end of the billing cycle.
Wow.
Consumers are increasingly reliant on credit cards to finance purchases of everyday goods and services, and that's because they're just getting a lot more expensive. At the same time, their wages are not increasing at the same pace as inflation. And that makes it more difficult because as the credit card balance increases, it can be more challenging for consumers to pay down that debt.
The excess savings that Americans lined their pockets with during the COVID-19 pandemic is largely now spent. High inflation and interest rates have made everything more expensive. Normal costs like groceries, gas, and housing are all rising. Add in the resumption of student loan repayments, and it's creating the perfect rising debt storm.
Americans are skipping out on some of their credit card payments because household budgets are squeezed due to higher borrowing costs.
Another factor for the rising debt is the increase of credit card users. More than 70 million new accounts have been opened since 2019. That year, 65% of Americans owned a credit card.
Nobody forces people to keep a balance on their card. That's 100% true, but it's definitely a discipline. And I do think that there are people that can be exploited in their vices. And I know that sounds crazy because people do believe that you should have ultimate control of yourself, and I agree too. But we know that humans are flawed, and if we want to have a healthy society, you do have to protect the flaws of people. And I don't think that charging people 29% interest rates is protecting the flaws of maybe the people who can be exploited by these charges. And obviously there's a lot of them, right? So there's somebody that and I think it's these credit card companies that are exploiting the American people to some degree. And I don't think that charging people 29% interest is moral. I think it's a moral wrong. I genuinely do. Now, I know there's some people going, oh, you're soft, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get it. I do think that people should have control, but there are some people that are going to be victims of those things. And I think that as a society, we should have some sense of trying to protect those people. And you can learn your lesson on a 5% interest rate. Capital One loaning you money ain't going to go bankrupt if you're giving them 5% back. They ain't going to go bankrupt, chat. I can guarantee you that. I promise. Capital One will be fine, 5%. They don't need 30%. I think that's just a level of greed that our politicians have allowed to happen. And that comes from lobbying. I think there are some people that are definitely being exploited, especially when you talk about an 18-year-old with no financial literacy because he spent all his 12 years in school learning about X and Y and how X equals Y. He never learned anything about the economy or financial literacy. So yeah, I think there's a level of people getting exploited too.
Credit card. And after a contraction in issuance due to the pandemic, the amount of Americans owning a credit card rose to 69% in 2023.
Credit cards can be like power tools. They could be really useful or they could be dangerous. It's all about how you use them.
Typically, after the holiday season, credit card debt levels drop as consumers pay down their shopping balances. But at the start of 2023, it remained unchanged, and now shoppers are prepared to spend even more than 2022.
Holiday shoppers do plan to spend more, according to a survey and the forecast done by the National Retail Federation. They found that people plan to spend about $40 more than they did last year, and that could be in part because of higher prices in some categories.
Yeah,
there
definitely
is still
higher
this
prices.
deal-seeking mentality for items. And so that may mean that people are going to look for whatever is on sale, along with seeking newness.
There is no such thing as a deal, chat. This is a lesson that I've had to learn. There is no such thing as a deal. If they are selling it to you for a price, that is the price that they agreed that they could sell it to you for. That's not a deal, chat. They're not giving you a deal. And oftentimes, I think I read a statistic where it was, I can't quite remember it, but I remember like almost no companies actually gave any deals on Black Friday. Almost all of the items that were on sale on Black Friday were actually available for lower prices throughout the year, chat. So what they do is coming into Black Friday, the prices slowly rise, and then on Black Friday they can say it's a 40% discount, but they raise the price by 20% over the course of the past 2 or 3 months to make it seem like you get a really good deal. There's no such thing as a sale. The only sale you get is keeping that money sealed in your pocket. Not letting them take you from your money. That's the sale you get. That's the best sale in the world. You can't beat that.
Americans planning to flood the mall with their retail credit cards may be shocked when the bill comes, because those cards are carrying a higher interest rate than years prior. In fact, some are starting to rise to rates that only subprime borrowers see, rates exceeding 33%.
Some retailers have already noticed is that credit card delinquencies have ticked up. And that may mean that people are struggling to make payments and could again be a warning sign.
Big box retailers like Macy's and Nordstrom already flagged the slowdown of repayments on their credit cards over the summer, showcasing a potential risk to retail revenue this season. The average consumer has around a $6,000 credit card balance, $400 to $600 monthly student loan payment, high rent, and car loan payments. Americans may wonder if it's even possible to keep their heads afloat.
The best tip for credit card debt payoff actually is to get a 0% balance transfer card. So you move your existing high-cost debt to this new card with a 0% promotional rate.
Credit card balances saw the largest increase of all debt types this year.
That's a horrible
$45
idea.
billion. And compared to other debt types, credit cards typically hold the highest interest rates.
Yeah.
Any extra money should probably go to the credit card, just because that's likely to be your highest cost debt by a wide margin.
A boom for consumers may come from Congress's Capping Credit Card Interest Rates Act. If passed, the bill would cap APR for credit cards at 18%, prevent credit card companies from imposing new fees to evade the cap, and impose penalties on credit card companies that violate the cap. But all eyes are still on the Fed.
We're not really sure where the Federal Reserve is going to be taking interest rates next. If they continue to hike rates, it could be more difficult for borrowers to pay down the debt. If they reduce interest rates, however, it will take some pressure off consumers, and they might be able to start making more consistent payments and reduce those delinquency rates.
Okay. Solid video. Solid video. What y'all think, chat? Should we be subsidizing or giving UBI to people who are making $100,000 a year because of their childhood trauma with their financial spending? Is that what we should be doing, chat?